Hello everyone, welcome back. We are continuing with the fifth section of Klal 2. And in this section, the Chofetz Chaim lists the third qualification of the Apit Lasa license. Now this qualification limits this license and by saying that it only applies when there are three listeners that are willing or apt to repeat what they heard. So the Chofetz Chaim says that if one of those three people was God-fearing, and God-fearing in the sense that he was particularly careful with the prohibition of Lashon Harah, then the report, the Chofetz Chaim says, is not liable to become known to the public, as a matter of fact, because we can assume that this God-fearing person will not relay the negative information to others. Therefore, the Apit Lasa license does not apply, because there are no three listeners that were apt to repeat what they heard. But if there, for example, were four listeners and one of them was God-fearing, obviously this license would apply because there were at least three people who were apt to repeat this derogatory account. And the Chofetz Chaim says that it's forbidden by Torah law for Levi, one of the listeners who's not God-fearing, to repeat the matter to someone else. And even if only one of the listeners, right, as we just said, of the three listeners was God-fearing, and are careful in the prohibition of Lashon Harah, the law is still the same, because this is no longer a case of Apit Lasa, which we just said. Now, the reasoning behind this, in order to understand the reasoning behind this, we need to understand the license of Apit Lasa. And it's based on the conduct of an average Jew. So someone who's not particularly wicked, nor he's particularly pious. So Chazal assessed such Jews that when they hear a negative report, it is inevitable, although it's not certain, it's inevitable that in time, at least one of them will slip up and share the report. And as such, the report will presumably become public knowledge in any case. However, particularly pious individuals always monitor the speech carefully and assiduously, so much so that no presumption can be made that eventually the information will come out of them. And therefore, there has to be at least three average Jews. So people who are not particularly wicked nor particularly pious. The Chofetz Chaim addresses a similar case where we have reason to believe that one or more of the listeners will be reluctant to repeat the report. So in this case, it's not someone who is pious, but it's someone who might be reluctant to repeat the report. So what's an example of this? If one of the three listeners was a relative or a friend of the person being disparaged. In this case, the same rationale applies. Since Shimon's, right, the Shimon is the person who's being disparaged. Since Shimon's friend or relative will certainly not go and reveal this information to everyone, this negative information about his relative or friend, consequently, this too is no longer a case of Apit Lasa when there are three listeners who are liable to publicize the report. Because in this case, this relative is the same as a tzaddik and a God-fearing person who will not allow himself to say this information and publicize the report. However, if there, as we already said, if there were four people, one of them was a relative and the rest were average Jews who were not related to the person being disparaged in any manner, then in that case the Apit Lasa license would apply. And that is the end of this section. Thank you very much for listening.